And the final choice, which shoe do I prefer? I thought it would be more difficult. Hey everyone, and welcome back on the channel. My name is Alex, and in today's video we are hosting a very interesting shoe battle, one that you requested, between the New Balance Fuelcell Rebel V2 and the Saucony Freedom 4, two daily trainers, tempo type of shoes, all-rounders actually, and so very interesting to see which of these shoes is best for each type of runner, each type of workouts, and we're gonna compare the data between these two shoes, the data that I gather with the RunScribe pods. Then we'll try to give some words and some features that stand out for each of them. After that, I will give points to each shoe and let you know which one I prefer, which one wins the point battle. And at the end of the video, I'm gonna tell you which shoe is best for each type of runner, heavier, lighter, heel striker, midfoot striker, stability runner, and so on. So stay with me until the end for that, because I think that can be quite relevant for all of you. Without no further ado, let's dive in. First of all, the data. So pace and power, I tested the two shoes at 4 minutes and 30 seconds per kilometer. That's around 7 minutes 15 per mile. It's the pace at which I think these two shoes are really in the sweet spot. Maybe a bit slow for their sweet spots, but you know, it's pretty much where they shine. In terms of steps and strides, I had a little less steps in the Rebel V2, which kind of makes sense because it's softer, it's bouncier, and you just want to use that cushion and that bounciness. So a bit less steps, but a bit more, heavy pounding just to sink in and get all that nice cushion with the Rebel. A bit more steps, so a higher cadence with the Freedom 4, and that also makes sense. So no big surprise here. Now in terms of efficiency, and that's the first quite kind of interesting metric from the data set, the Rebel, to go at the same pace, so 430 per kilometer, costs 10 extra watts. So basically you're less efficient with this shoe, which again makes sense, but the 10 watts is a quite significant figure, so you're really less efficient. Essentially, you're losing quite some energy in that foam, in that softness, in that plushness, and that's where the 10 extra watts go. So the Freedom 4 is more efficient, and you're losing less energy running at the same pace with the Freedom 4. Now, in terms of midsole and ride, first of all, quickly the specs. So we have 26 millimeters of stock height in the heel and 20 in the forefoot for the Rebel, 6 millimeters drop, and 28 in the heel, 24 in the forefoot for the Freedom 4, so 4 millimeters drop, 6 and 4. For the durometer, that's also quite interesting. So I measured both the midsole and the outsole for each shoe, and you will have the numbers right now on your screen, but I mean, no surprise, but it's good to see that the objective numbers are matching the subjective feelings, and both the midsole and the outsole of the Rebel V2 are softer than those of the Saucony Freedom 4, and by quite a significant margin. So you have something like, I'm looking at the numbers, 25 for the midsole and 45, that's the durometer scores, and you will have them on your screen. For the Rebel V2, 25-45 and 31-67. So the outsole is really rigid on the Freedom 4. 31-67 for the Freedom, and so the subjective feeling of the Rebel V2 being very soft is confirmed. But also, and interestingly, that's the magic of this shoe. I mentioned it in a first impression review that I will put a link to here upper right hand corner. the outsole of the Freedom 4 works very well and plays into the magic of this shoe. It really encapsulates the midsole of this shoe, and it also makes sense to have quite a high number for the durometer score of the outsole on the Freedom 4. In terms of dimensions of the platform, I don't know if you can see the two different shapes. The thing that is really surprising when you compare them is that the Rebel V2 is really wide, not everywhere, but really in that midfoot area here, where you have your your foot arch, and here it's like really wide. It's even wider in the midfoot than in the heel. So I will put the numbers on your screen, but that's really a fun fun shape to have. But I mean, the Freedom isn't narrow. It's a bit less wide than the Rebel, especially in that midfoot zone. But it isn't narrow by any means. But it's good to have those numbers in mind. Now, in terms of responsiveness, we're looking at ground contact time as a proxy value for responsiveness. And this is a bit of a surprise because you will see the numbers right now on the screen. And I expected the Freedom to be a bit more responsive simply because it's less plush, less cushioned, and so I expected it to be a bit more, peppy. It turns out that the contact times are a bit lower for the Rebel and a bit higher for the Freedom 4. So that was a bit of a surprise to me, and I'm taking it with a grain of salt because I think it's worth looking with time at other data sets and see if it's confirmed between the two shoes, and see if the responsiveness is actually higher on the Rebel than on the Freedom. But for this data set, the one I'm sharing with you, it's all transparent. I cannot tweak the numbers; they're just recorded and I show them to you. It's actually more responsive on the Rebel, supposedly at least. Now for the bounciness, we are looking as a proxy as well at the contact time between max pronation and toe off. And so the lower, the bouncier. Here, no surprise, and so that's also why I'm a bit surprised for the responsiveness, but maybe actually the data works well together and the Rebel is maybe more responsive. But the Rebel shows as being more bouncy, which is the subjective feeling that I have, and that most people who tried the Rebel also have, is that the Rebel V2 is quite bouncy, and indeed the Rebel has a lower figure for the MPTO value, so 170 again 185, and so it's bouncier as per the numbers. And the Freedom 4 is a bit less bouncy, but that makes sense. Now in terms of leg pounding, and so you will ask, Alex, how do you measure leg pounding? That's very subjective. Your legs may be more suffering from one shoe, one workout compared to someone else legs, and you're right. Now, there is one way to know if a shoe is pounding for your legs, and that's the shock, the impact, and the braking. So interestingly, the Rebel is more cushioned, and so indeed it has less shock. So we're looking at 11 Gs of shock against 12.8 Gs of shock. And surprisingly as well, I thought that maybe you're braking more and you're sort of sinking more into the Rebel, and so you're having more of that pounding in your quads and your hamstrings with the Rebel, but no, actually you have less lower braking values with the Rebel and a bit higher with the Freedom 4. So the impact of sort of braking and that moment where you decelerate are higher with the Freedom 4. Quite interesting as well, and something to have in mind. Now, the final set of metrics for the first data-oriented part of the video is everything related to motion. So we have the foot strike type, the pronation, and the pronation velocity. So in terms of foot strike type, I am striking a bit more forefoot with the Freedom and a bit more midfoot with the Rebel. And I think that kind of makes sense because I'm trying to make the most out of the Rebel's cushion, and you have the max amount of cushion is somewhere right here where I'm striking, and that kind of makes sense. Now with the Freedom 4, I have a more natural type of foot strike, and so I'm striking more towards the forefoot. And I can tell it because I really enjoyed the type of gait cycle that I have with the Freedom 4 because it's quite natural, and so the numbers, you know, make sense with my subjective feelings. Now the pronation is pretty much in the same ballpark. You will see the values. There's one number for my, I think, right foot with the Freedom 4 that doesn't quite make sense, but overall I think the numbers are pretty much in the same ballpark, which means that for stability runners, we'll come back to that at the end of the video in more details, but both shoes are quite okay. I would have said that the Rebel is less stable, and I think it's less stable because you have, you know, less inherent stability because of the softness of the foam. However, that's maybe also, you know, because I have stronger feet muscles, stronger calves, I don't know. But for me, there's no big difference in terms of pronation with the two shoes and the pronation velocity. So basically the pronation velocity is the speed, the angular speed at which you are pronating. So, you know, that would be a very low pronation velocity, and that would be a very high one. So very high because very fast angular speed, and very low. Here the idea behind pronation velocity is that the higher the pronation velocity, the more likely you are to be injury prone, because the more tension you apply to your you know, heel and joints and so on, tendons and whatever else. So and here the pronation velocity is pretty much the same, so no big difference. All right, that's it for the, you know, very pure data part of the video. Now we will jump to the next section, but before that, if you're enjoying this video, please make sure you consider subscribing. That's a great help for the channel and a big motivation boost for me as well. Just to give you an idea, in the previous shoe battle, so that was, I think, the Rebel V2 against the Hoka Mach 4, more than 92% or 93% of the viewers were not subscribed to the channel. So, you know, that's just a little fun fact, but let's try to increase the number of subscribers among the viewers. That would be amazing. All right, now one word to describe each shoe, and I will begin with the Rebel, or a few words, but one word at a time. It's light, it's fun, it's plush. All right. Now for the Freedom, it's serious, it's efficient, and it's a surprise. I mean, you maybe saw the first impression review, but it was a good surprise for me. So I think surprise is, in a positive way, the third word for the Freedom 4. Now I will quickly go through the features and give points to each shoe. So for the upper, I am picking the Rebel because the upper is so thin, so, you know, so flexible, so nicely done that, and here the upper is quite traditional on the Freedom 4. So for the upper, I go with the Rebel V2. Now for the midsole, I am picking the Freedom 4. The Power Run PB midsole, that PB-based midsole, is more responsive, I would say. Less bouncy, less soft, but it's more responsive and it's maybe more versatile. So I'm going with the midsole of the Freedom 4. In terms of outsole, I am picking, I'm calling it a draw, simply because both are the same type of grip, and, you know, I think the durability may be a bit better on the Freedom 4, but I am not sure because I don't have enough mileage on any of the shoes to see significant wear on them. So I think that's a draw for the outsole. For the ride, I think that's pretty much the same conclusion as for the midsole, and I'm going with the Freedom 4 again because it's more versatile, more capable, and for me the Rebel V2 is a bit too plush. It's a very fun shoe, very nice on the legs, but maybe a tad too plush for me. In terms of laces, it's a draw. Both shoes have good laces, nothing to complain about, so I'm not giving points for the laces because of that. In terms of fit, I would tend to pick the Freedom for the fit. The heel is more traditional, the upper is more traditional, but the fit is also more traditional and more accommodating. I'm a bit struggling, not with the fit, because the fit is okay, but with the fact that the upper of the Rebel is so nice, and that's why I gave it a point for the upper, but it's so nice, so thin, so unnoticeable when you're running that in the end you tend to forget a bit about the fit. And depending on, you know, the thickness of the insole that you're putting inside, depending on the thickness of the sock that you're wearing, the fit can be really different, and you tend to lose a bit sensations if you don't have the right insole, the right sock. So I would pick the Freedom because it's more consistent in terms of how the fit works, you know, day after day. Now the price, I think that goes for the Rebel simply because it's like $10 or $20 cheaper in the US. In Europe, both shoes are in the same ballpark. You can find the Freedom as low as 130 euros. That's actually thanks to you that I heard about it in the comments. I think it was Robin or someone else, but someone in the comments mentioned it's available for 130 euros in Europe. It's priced at 180 euros in Europe, which is really too much for the shoe. At 130, it's a great deal and it's cheaper than the Rebel. So simply because the Rebel is overall cheaper, I would go for the Rebel in terms of price. And the final choice, which shoe do I prefer? I thought it would be more difficult. It's not that difficult. I prefer the Freedom 4. It's a great surprise. I'm really pleasantly surprised by the shoe. I like how it works for me, how it's reminiscent of, you know, for certain reasons of the Pegasus Turbo, which was one of my favorite shoes of all times. And I really like the Freedom 4. The Rebel is a great shoe and definitely it's in my rotation. You can see my stride pad on it because I ran with the Rebel recently. But yeah, I mean, it's too plush and it doesn't have that same versatility and that same homogeneous type of experience compared to the Freedom 4. So I'm going with the Freedom 4. And now the final part of this video, and maybe the one you're the most interested in, which shoe is best for each type of runner. So let's dissect this a bit. If you're a heel striker, I would recommend the Freedom. You will experience more impact, more shock. We saw that in the metrics, but you will have something a bit more stable compared to the heel of the Rebel. If you're a midfoot striker, I would say that both shoes can work well for you. The Rebel is maybe a touch better simply because in the midfoot you have all that midsole you know, stack and all that cushion. That's really the sweet spot of the midsole in terms of cushion. That's the midfoot. So maybe the Rebel is a bit better. Forefoot strikers, I would recommend the Freedom. I'm a forefoot striker and the Freedom is working better for me. So yeah, that's basically for the different type of striking. Heavy runners, unless you have stability issues or at least stability needs, that's maybe a better way of saying it, I would go for the Rebel. Heavier people may experience a better ride with a bit more cushion, and so the Rebel may be way better for you. Lighter runners, both can work really. I would personally pick the Freedom for all the reasons that I mentioned, but both shoes can work for lighter runners. Stability runners, the same reason as for the heel. Both shoes are stable, and you saw my pronation metrics, but I would pick the Freedom simply because I think it's more consistent in terms of stability, and the construction is more traditional, and you maybe have a touch more stability. It's not a stability shoe, but you maybe have a touch more stability on the Freedom. All right, guys, that's it for today. We compared the data of the shoes, we compared the different specs, and I hope that it was useful for you. That's the most important part. Let me know in the comments what were your thoughts after this video. Did you enjoy it? Was it useful? Are you going to pick one of the two shoes or none of them? And what are your reasons? I'm really looking forward to hear from you in the comments. As I'm saying quite often, I really enjoyed the part that comes after shooting the video, after editing it, and that is in the comments when I'm chatting with you. That's actually a thing that I really appreciate. So keep on commenting, subscribe if you're not in our little community, yet, but you're very welcome to join and to subscribe. In the meantime, enjoy your run today, your rides, or whatever else you may be doing today in terms of sports. Go beyond your limits in your training and next weekend in your racing if you're lucky enough to race. And most importantly, take care. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.